Well, the parents of the bride and groom, let's see, Janny and Nell and Scott and Katrina, in their mid 50s now, they stood there and marveled at the flow of water, endless, coming out there. And Scott, after a while, said, "You know, that water has probably been roaring out of that spring for hundreds of thousands of years. Think about that." He said, "Well, I had to speak a little loud because of the roar." And he added, he said, "You know, I'm sure this is fine water and wonderful to drink, but and that's why it's called Earth's Drink. We'll have to ask our guides about that. But if I'd been here, I think I would have called this Roaring Spring, and maybe even the town." Well, they stood there a while, and they were about to move on, but just about then, a school bus, not one of the real big long school buses, but a sort of a medium half-size school bus, stopped behind them, and children began to get out. They were all little children. They looked like they were in first grade, maybe second grade. They didn't know, but these little children got out and stood there by the bus, and then their teacher, or I guess it was their teacher, although it was funny, it was summer. You know, school was out, so this must have been a summer program or something. I'll call her teacher. She got out, and the children were there by the bus, and they weren't paying any attention to the adults or even to the roaring spring. They stood there, and the teacher said, "Okay, now I'm going to let you go, but remember, listen to what the docent says and don't run. Okay, you can go." Well, this children, there might have been 30 of them, maybe 20, 30. They at first they walked, but in no time they took off at a run. All of them running, and you know, the teacher noticed the adults there, and she just, you know, shook her head and smiled. Well, where they were running to was around the side of the pond, back past a grassy spot, kind of close to the forested, the wooded hillside where the spring was coming out. There were another set of buildings like the ones that they had marveled at around the fountain, but they were smaller and they were lower. But you could see they were similar, and they were in a square. Four of them, just like around the fountain. Now they looked lower because they didn't have, you know, as they followed the kids. Who wouldn't? You know, they wanted to see where are these kids going, but they walked along leisurely, and they could see that unlike the buildings around the fountain, these buildings didn't have that smallest part at the bottom. It was like what was at the fountain, what was sitting on the 8 foot by 8 foot first story, was on the ground where they were heading. There were four buildings which presumably were about 10 foot by 10 foot in a group. And as they got closer, they could see that, yes, in the middle of those four buildings, there was a fountain, or looked like a fountain. It was smaller, much smaller. And as they got closer, they came to a sign that named where the children were running. Well, they'd run right into the middle there, and it said the name of it was Earth's Drink, Quinta Pedagogica. Well, I can say that because I speak Portuguese, but so could they. It's spelled Quinta, and then pedagogica. But they could read it because underneath it, remember, they had that alternate spelling. So Quinta was K-I-N-T-U, Quinta, and Pedagogica was spelled almost the same. So this was a Quinta Pedagogica, whatever that was, and and then it also said nursery, Quinta Pedagogica Nursery. And one other thing it said is that adults must be accompanied by children. And well, there weren't any adults there except for well, there were a few. There were the docents, and I'm going to call them docents. They were the caretakers, and you know, of course, the woman. There were two women actually that was with the children. Well, still before the parents got close, they saw children coming back out of that area, which was fenced. Actually, the four buildings had a fence, like a chain link fence around it. Children were coming out, sort of running again, but now they were carrying little things that, well, as they got closer, they saw what they were, because before too long, the children started to head they were running down to the pond and then heading back up. We're not running now, because what those were yokes shaped for a human shoulder, and going on with ropes hanging down for buckets. I mean, maybe you've seen or heard of them for adults, but these were small. They were just child size, but they were made comfortable for the little shoulders. And of course, the little kids were only carrying pails, and there was somebody down there at the pond that was there was steps to get down to the water level, just one or two steps. It was pretty low, and they were filling the pails for them, or letting the kids. Sometimes there were always some that insisted no, they wanted to dip the pails in the water and get the water themselves, and they'd hook it on the ropes on either side. So you saw this parade of little kids running down, and then walking, carrying water up there. And again, now since they weren't accompanied by children, they couldn't go in. But they could stand out and look. And they saw that the children were filling a tank, I guess I'd call it, where the fountain base was down below. In the middle, there was a tank, masonry, and round, and they were filling it with water. That was their duty. And then they could see some of them after they'd done that. That was like one of the most fun things to do. They would go around and check on all the animals. You see, it was full of animals, baby animals, small animals. It was a nursery. And there they're in their own separate little stalls or boxes or cages in some cases, or even free. There were, you know, rabbits, guinea pigs, gerbils, chickens, ducks, piglets. There were some piglets there, orphaned, or lambs, or goat kids. About the biggest animal there would probably be one of the goat kids that was getting big enough that it was time for him or her to move out away from the nursery to the other section of the Quinta Pedagogica of Earth's Drink, which they would find out about later. They had lots of questions already for their guides that they were going to meet. Remember, at 11 o'clock, and there's one other thing I want to explain about what was so unusual about this park, but I think I'll wait and do that in my next video. Bye for now.